Good morning. Welcome to Market Day Report. Weekend almost here. We're glad you're with us this morning. Now we've got a report coming up at 2 o'clock this afternoon, 2 o'clock Central Time from USDA. It's a cattle on feed report. We'll talk more about that in a moment. First off, let's look at the corn market and how things traded in the overnight session. A couple of pennies higher on the December corn contract at 428 3/4. Deferreds were all higher, and we saw a bounce back after a day of lower trade in the bean market. January 983 up 5 1/4, just a penny off of the session's high. Wheat market, we'll start Chicago. Front couple of months were lower, down a half penny on the December. That's old crop. But you roll out to new crop July and 587 1/2. That was a 1/4 cent higher. Hard red, what happened there? Higher across the board. July up 3/4 of a penny at 583. Couple of pennies off of the session high, and a 2.5 cent gain for December spring wheat, 590 1/2. New York cotton futures, 183 points higher, 71.02 on the December, first notice day on that. March is where the activity is happening, 70.50 up 7. Brian Hoops is president, Midwest Market Solutions. And Brian, again this morning we talk about a flash sale, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, Tony. 198,000 metric tons of soybeans sold to that elusive unknown destination category. Likely will end up being China. What we haven't seen this week is any corn sales. We've been shut out the entire week of any corn. It's all been soybeans, meal, and an oil sale this week. And I think that's going to have the trade a little bit concerned about the future of the corn market and sustaining these rallies. Now, what we've seen, despite big ending stocks of both corn and soybeans, is a narrowing of the basis and narrowing of the spreads. And we continue to see that in the overnight trade into this morning hours, meaning the December contract, or in this case of soybeans, the January contract, is gaining against the other months. And what the market is clearly telling producers is to sell their product now with a tight basis, with a little carry that's left out into the market into May or even out to July. The market wants the product now because we have strong demand. We've had very good demand for corn up until this week. We've had soybean demand improving all fall, and now we started off our marketing year behind. Now we're about 8% ahead of last year's export pace, but the product needs to be pried out of the farmer's hands. That's what the market is trying to do, and it's telling you that down the road, when we get into the South American harvest, February, March, April, prices are not going to be as advantageous as what they are today. So if you're a producer out there, it makes sense to make those cash sales. And if you want to be bullish, re-own it same time on paper, maybe down the road on paper, but at some point look at re-ownership, but just not maybe today. Today's the time to be looking at these selling opportunities. So we have a higher dollar. Again, overnight, making new highs. That, along with good rains, good forecasted rains in Argentina and Brazil, looks to cap rallies in the grain markets today.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about that cattle on feed report set to come out in a few hours. Market Day Report continues in a moment. All right, couple of things we're watching in the cattle market today. One will be cash cattle. What will happen on that front? Will we see higher prices, lower prices, even prices? And the second thing we're watching is after the close today at 2 o'clock, a cattle on feed report from USDA. More on that in just a moment. First off, live cattle futures yesterday. How did we settle? Lower. December off 70 at 185.60. February at 187.42, losing a $0.50. For the feeders on Thursday, January gained $1.12, 253.45. March contract up 70 cents at 252.10, 75-cent gain on the April. And the hog trade, again, hogs up 18.9% year to date. December up 27, 80.80. February yesterday 84.65, up 17. Let's bring back in Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions, cattle on feed. What are you thinking?
Yeah, that comes out, as you said, 2 o'clock this afternoon. Trade will be watching it closely. If there's a surprise, it's probably going to be in that placement category. The average trade guess is right around 3.5% more placements than what we saw a year ago. Now, we've seen some higher estimates. There could be some lower estimates with ideas that some of these cattle were not put into feedlots. They were put onto grass and pastures to graze for a while because of all the good moisture and the rains that we've seen across the winter wheat plains areas. The on-feed numbers look to come in really close to last year's levels. And we did see some cash trade this week, and it's at $1 higher money at 186 in the Southern Plains. That could give us a little bit of hedge lifting in today's trade activity. Looking at the slaughter pace this week, it's been a surprisingly strong pace. We're well ahead of last week's pace, and yet the cutout values were higher last night. So that's a positive sign, I think, for the cattle market, cattle industry. Next week, with the Thanksgiving holiday, we'll no doubt see a slowdown in that slaughter, and hopefully packers can regain some of their margins. Cutout values continue to push higher as a result of that. We do need to continue to work these cattle through, as weights were up last week by a couple pounds, and we're still much, much heavier than we were a year ago. So it's important to keep these marketing efforts moving through the feedlots and keep them pretty current. So I guess one final note on the feeder cattle, we've seen a great rally over last week in the feeder cattle. That index is still about $1 above the January futures, with November going off the board yesterday. January is trying to narrow that spread between where the futures are and where that index is, and it probably has at least another $1 to go before we can call that spread back on par.
All right, good information there. Plus, we'll keep an eye on the dollar. We'll see you back here on Monday, and that'll be after that cattle on feed report. Again, Brian Hoops with Midwest Market Solutions.